we're going to start with something a little lighthearted today before we get into the good stuff. So, that's my dog. That's Winston.
Get over here. You ready for a haircut? Oh, not yet. No, he's singing it. And look at it. Oh, he's a whole new dog. What a beautiful dog. Yes. So happy. Oh, there you go. Oh, yes. So good. So good. Look at that beautiful dog. He's a new dog.
Yeah, we got a new dog.
Sit. No, he still doesn't know.
Sit.
Now, I'll tell you one thing. He might be able to win a world's ugliest dog competition. He could give Sam, that Chinese crested, a run for his money. I was trying to encourage the kids to think he looks a little better. He looks good. You could really see the muscles and the definition in his body, but the groomer may have gone a little hard on the clipper. Oh, he does look much more comfortable. It's hot in Florida. He was getting stuff stuck in his fur, poo-poo in the end side of his fur. Oh, yeah, but it's going to take some getting used to because Winston is blind, and you could see... Do I want to bring that back up? Whatever. He's blind, and you can really now see the blindness in his eyes. People think he was blind because the fur was covering his eyes. He's blind because he was born with lenticonus or lentiglobus. Lenticonus? Some eye thing. That's why he was a rescue. They couldn't find him a family, and we're like, well, we already got a half-paralyzed dog who craps and pisses all over the house. What's another special needs dog that, hey, at least he's housebroken, so it's good. Alrighty. We've got a show today. It's going to be very Canadian-centric, starting a little early because we're coordinating with Caryma Saad, who's one of the two authors of... what's the name of the memo? Hold on one second. I don't want to... Basically, it's breaking... It's called Hategate, people, and apparently people want Hategate to trend in Canada. I say these organizations, much like the... what was it, like the People's Liberations Army typically are not about people's liberation. Whenever a communist country really wants to cloak its communism or its tyranny, they call themselves like the People's Republic or the People's Democracy of whatever. In Canada, much like in the States we've got the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which oddly enough engages in more defamation than they protect, allegedly, in my humble opinion. We've got something in Canada called the Canada Anti-Hate Network, CAN, and they look into online extremism. They look into online hate. And they tackle online hate, even if it means manufacturing the hate for the purposes of tackling it. And Caryma Saad and Elise Hadigan, we're going to get how to pronounce her last name, I say Hadigan, produced an 86-page report, breakdown, detailing how the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is itself the purveyor of disinformation and the purveyor of hate that the government then subsequently relied on in order to create enemies where there were none, so they could invoke Emergencies Acts where there was no need. And it's like one big, I don't want to use the term circle jerk, but that's what it is. Like one person feeding fake information to another who then finances those people to provide the fake information so they can then launder it off to whomever they need to in order to justify whatever fabricated crisis they financed that never existed in the first place. Okay, Caryma is in the backdrop. Let me make sure that we're live everywhere. So, by the way, order of the day. We're live here 10 o'clock. McKenzie's coming on probably around 11 o'clock. I might end this stream and then go pop in with Eric Hunley at noon if I can, but I'm live with the quartering. Jeremy at 1 o'clock, so busy day. And without further ado, I got Caryma. Oh, look at... Oh, I like the shirt that she's got on. We did not plan this, people, but it's funny. All right, Caryma, I'm bringing you on. 3, 2, 1. Look at this. We match, except you've got Hategate and I got Viva Fry. Oh, that's too funny. Caryma, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. And yourself?
Good. Before I go any further, I'm going to make sure that the audio is good. We're live on Rumble. Are we live on Locals, where we should be streaming as well? We good here? Yeah, we're matching. You know what? I actually have red frame glasses that I could really put on if we want to do this. Okay, Caryma, you've been on only once before. It was a shorter segment. It was the first time we had met digitally. We subsequently met in person. For those who don't know who you are, who are you?
So my name is Caryma Saad. I am a Toronto-based lawyer, and now I guess I can call myself an investigative journalist. I've been documenting the protest circuit in Ontario for almost 3 years at this point, which involves being boots on the ground and just checking out what is happening. I was at the convoy for the full duration of it, and I've sort of stayed on that beat, and that is what brought me to collaborating with Elisa Hadigan to produce Hategate.
What year bar? I know I asked you this the last time. What year bar are you?
I was called in 2016, and I've been practicing on my own since 2017. My actual law practice it's primarily housing, eviction based, with a cannabis niche and a small criminal practice.
Okay, very cool. 2016, young as anything. Now that is what year are we in? 2016. So that's like 7 years. And then you get into journalism, or what we call journalism, or just documenting reality. I don't think did we run into each other at the convoy?
I saw you a few times, so I have footage of you. So I might pop up on your live stream somewhere, but we didn't actually interact.
Was I good in the footage that you have of me?
For sure. You were talking to some of your fans and just describing your own trajectory. In fact, I think you were giving one guy advice on how to monetize his content.
Yes, well, there is. In order to be independent, you have to be independent. And I remember not seeing you there, because I don't remember seeing you there, but I remember seeing your footage. And what I thought was interesting about your footage, based on what your online persona, for lack of a better word, is that it seemed even-handed in that it didn't hide embarrassing or prejudicial stuff from one side or the other. And I remember predicting at one point in time that was going to get you into trouble with one side, because I call it my own bias. I think one side does not like exposing their own foibles more than the other side. I say one side dislikes exposing their own foibles more than the other side, but maybe that's just my own bias. And then, okay, look, I'll bring up one thing just so people can really see here. You were at that protest where we saw each other over the summer. You were the one, and you'll give credit where other credit is due, who really broke. I knew the guy was a liar, Joel Harden, and you came with the receipts. But this is what I think is one of the better videos that illustrates your patience and your recklessness, if I can say that. First of all, it's Matt Damon. I didn't know Matt Damon was at protests. This is Joel Harden. This is a guy pointing an emergency ear buzzer inches from your face. I love that look. Okay, so you document the protests, much to the dismay of some who might consider your political allies, or allies who I don't know how you fit in between the left and the right and whatever. How is that environment for you, just to walk that line?
I mean, I think it's kind of a false binary, this left-right. For me, what drives me is, what are the facts on the ground and how does that fit into reality? So I have opinions on issues, and I observe tactics, and I try not to be overly heavy-handed with my commentary, which is something I've evolved as I went along, simply because, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And so I have focused on being a lens for people, or a mirror, or, whatever metaphor we want to use. But it is a curious phenomenon to have extreme elements on either side of this spectrum really unhappy with my presence. And especially so because if we are talking my actual politics, I tend to be left-leaning on issues. So the strong reaction from people who frame themselves as anti-fascists or defenders or guardians, that has been something to work through. And I can't say that I have a resolution at this point, apart from the fact that I keep going and keep exercising my own freedoms and civil liberties. Because I think underscoring all of this, right, we have division between civilians, and that is fomented by people who stand to benefit from that. And it's all a distraction from what I see as the core issue, which is how we relate to the institutions that govern us and what laws are being passed that affect our ability to be sort of free citizens.
Now, I like the answer, and some people call it waffling, others are going to call it nuanced. I agree with the dichotomy, the false dichotomy, and I only use like the left versus the right as a oversimplification. I think the more nuanced breakdown might be I've reduced it to the blue pill and the red pill, or the black pill, which is not ideological, but rather just sort of observational. And I'm not trying to pin you down on an answer, but I'll ask you the question because I've lived through the experience myself. Where do you feel you've covered both sides? Like you've been on the Antifa side, documenting, not supporting, and you've been on what they would call the furthest of the far right side, I guess, like the trucker convoy, the education, not indoctrination side of things. In your experience, where have you felt more intimidated with violence, with psychological pressure? On the side of and I'll just use these terms, the rainbow flag side of the protest, or the Canadian flag side of the protest. Where have you felt more or less comfortable?
It's been a journey. So, if I'm comparing sort of an overall average, I would say that the tendency on the right, if we're using that phrasing, it is less exclusionary in the sense that there's no expectation or a reduced expectation of adherence to every single point, right? There's not like, you don't have to be in perfect lockstep. There's still infighting on issues and a degree of groupthink, but there's a bit more, ironically, tolerance for kind of, well, you agree with us on this and not that, but that's fine. You can still sit with us. On the other side of the spectrum, I found it to be a bit more rigid and more, how do we say, the projection of expectations, which are arbitrary at times, including the idea that we don't talk to the other side, which I can't accept that. Just as a lawyer, part of what I do, what I've been trained to do, is speak with people who I disagree with, who I may vehemently disagree with, who I may dislike, but you nonetheless get together at the table. Sometimes it has to be adjudicated by a third party, but often things resolve just by discussion. It's overly simplistic to say that all of the issues we're facing in today's society can be debated away. I don't think that's true. But I do believe that the mental shortcuts that we take, where we affix labels and are careless about doing that, and in particular, the purity spiral on the left that ends up being exclusionary because you're constantly shaving away from sort of the group of people who are deemed acceptable. So it's the opposite phenomenon as you see on the right. Where have I felt more intimidated? I was swarmed a couple of times during the convoy. That was frightening. But I've also been swarmed at library drag story times by people who are purporting to support that event. I've been smeared on either side. I've had lies about me spread on either side. I think that it tends to be a bit more hurtful and insidious when it comes from the left, simply because that is where most of my leanings would find themselves to some degree. And so that rejection, where it is based on fantasies and fabrication, has been very frustrating.
All right, very interesting. Now we're going to move this over to Rumble to get into the hate gate, and all I'll say is the bad behavior when I was at the convoy. You'd see heckling. You'd see some people heckling CNN, calling them names, swearing, etc. That was about the worst that I saw there. I just, in terms of my experience, I felt more intimidated in interviewing the counter-protesters than I ever did, albeit one saw me as an ally, the other one saw me as an enemy. But I genuinely think, I don't know if you saw the video of those neo-Nazis protesting on a bridge in Florida, I have a feeling they would have been more open to me asking them hard questions than the counter-protesters in Ottawa, but maybe that's just my own stupidity and naivety. Okay, I'm giving the link to Rumble, everybody, and now we're going to get into Hategate and call it a freaking, what's the word? An oeuvre in English? Oh,
An opus?
An opus.
I'm calling it a manifesto. Part manifesto, part...
don't call it a manifesto. That has a little too much to it. All right, come on over to Rumble, everybody. I'm going to end it on YouTube now. Caryma doesn't change anything on our end. See you there. And then this will be back on YouTube, not live. Okay, boom. All right, so I'm not calling it a manifesto. That's a bad word. We'll call it an opus. We'll call it a tome. How long had you been working on this? It's an 86-page report. We'll bring it up when we want to go through certain sections. I shared it in our locals community. I'm sure I shared it on Twitter, but it's all over Twitter. 86 pages. How long did this take? When did you start working on this?
Elisa and I got access to the underlying FOIPOP documents. That's the Freedom of Information documents that prompted us to write this on September 1st. And we were ready to publish on September 11th. So it was very much a whirlwind experience putting it together. We were collaborating, writing into, I don't think either of us slept very much over the course of those 10 days. And the intention was initially to release it. And the teaser came out on September 11th. Which was symbolic for a couple of reasons. And the press release was accepted on September 12th because there's a back and forth process, a vetting process in order to broadcast through that system. So it was very 10 days, 10, 11 days.
Wow. And it's based on a lot of information that came through, what do they call it, FOIPOP in Canada? Freedom of Information.
Protection of privacy.
Okay.
So just for those who aren't familiar with the legislative regime, in Canada, citizens are permitted to basically write into government agencies, including federal government, that may have information that's relevant to them or just ought to be accessible generally to the public. So there's a lot that doesn't get released by bureaucrats or departments or agencies of their own volition, but nonetheless, we are entitled to have access to it. So there is a system by which you write in, you specify what you're looking for. Someone else had done the heavy lifting on that side of it, and it took a year to obtain the documents. And once they were in hand, there are some redactions. So, that's a caveat to the report that we don't know everything that, was held back. So there's information we're just not privy to. And it came through and it was just over 1,000 pages that we then sort of methodically went through and tried to figure out patterns and just look for information that was relevant.
What was the wording, or what was the scope of the original FOIPOP request?
It was fairly limited. So it was anything relating to Diagolon or Diagolon as a militia from, and I forget the date range, it was about a year, ending in August 2022. So that's kind of the scope of what we were working with.
All right, now let me bring this up because it's also classic. Is it hate? Oh, son of a gun. Hold on a second. I brought the wrong. Okay. I hear myself somewhere in the background. I hate it when I do this. Okay, I'm trying to bring up, not that, I'm trying to bring up Rachel Gilmore's analysis of what is Diagolon. Hold on. I know I have it. No, that's me. That's Trudeau. What to know about Diagolon? Here, look at this. One of these TikTok videos.
Conservative leadership frontrunner Pierre Poilievre came under fire this past weekend after an image of him shaking hands with Jeremy McKenzie, the founder of a group known as Diagolon, emerged. Now, Poilievre says he shakes hands with tens of thousands of people and he can't possibly background check them all. But what exactly is Diagolon? Basically, it's a group of live streamers that made up a joke country based on the states and provinces that at the time didn't have mask mandates. It started as a meme. Their pretend vice president is an evil goat. But during their hours-long live streams, Diagolon members have warned about a looming societal collapse, which they blame on the government. And they'll call for something to be done about this without saying what. This is what worries extremism experts, especially after what appeared to be Diagolon patches were found alongside a bunch of weapons the RCMP seized in Coutts, Alberta earlier this year. Because while this group says they're just joking around, the experts say followers might take the warnings about society to heart and decide to do something about it. Read more at globalnews.ca.
The experts referenced twice in that. I'm not trying to make fun of Rachel Gilmore here. The experts. So do you know, when it came to understanding what Diagolon was, it now seems that the experts, so-called experts, it all circles back to one group, and that's the Canadian Anti-Hate Network?
That is pretty fair to say. So what we took away from the documents is that law enforcement relied very heavily on open source material. And from what we could tell, that included a great deal of information, writings, production from the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, their own articles, and quotes that they provided to media outlets. So the RCMP then were taking these media statements and this third-party analysis of Diagolon. There was some evidence that RCMP officers tuned into a few episodes at least themselves to take notes here and there, but the bulk of it seemed to come from the Anti-Hate Network. And so they're at this nexus of information sharing, and media, government officials, law enforcement are then relying on one another and buttressing their views, not realizing or indifferent to the fact that there was no triangulation of sources. And there were a few RCMP officers, to their credit, who pointed this out, but the vast majority of what we consumed seemed to be looking for proof to confirm the conclusion that had already been reached. So a form of tunnel vision where the less evidence they found, the more determined they were to find something.
It's amazing. You say like they don't realize that they're chasing each other's tail, or they know damn well that's what they're doing, and they're very happy to do it. First question: open source. What does that mean exactly?
Open source essentially means that it can come through a Google search, or it's publicly available, as opposed to an investigative process, right? So it's a component of investigation, but where law enforcement is relying exclusively on open source, it's unclear how they were vetting. And there were sessions and reports provided by experts, some named, some unnamed. The ones who were named have connections to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, and it was interesting. One of the sessions on accelerationism, the feedback was, well, he seemed poorly informed on this, but the rest of it was nice. And that was the core of the presentation. So even within the RCMP, there were hesitations or reluctance, but no one that I could see really pumped the brakes to say, hang on, what is it that we're doing here? Is this rational?
Now, I don't want to oversimplify or straw man, but open source, as far as I understand, means some schnook is just surfing the internet, and they're picking in whatever they find on the internet, and it could come from real accounts, fake accounts, trolls. It could come from the people who are searching it themselves indirectly. That's what open source means.
Yeah, and in fact, some of the accounts relied on were anonymous accounts.
Okay, now, that was one question. I'll bring up the video in a second, actually. Funding for the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. How familiar are you with the funding? Where do they get their funding from? How do they exist?
So we know that in 2018, when the Anti-Hate Network came into existence, there was initial seed money from the Southern Poverty Law Center to the tune of $25,000. And they obtained a grant, an anti-racism action. There's so many acronyms, so forgive me, I may mess up some of the words, but they obtained a grant through Heritage Canada to the tune of roughly $250,000. And that was for several years. I think it ended in 2022. There are also, if you go to their website, the first thing you get is a pop-up for donations, and that is a recurring aspect. So they solicit private donations during the convoy. I believe it was Jerry Butts who said he donated $10,000 in one go.
Who's Jerry Butts?
Jerry Butts being the former, or I don't know his precise connection at this moment, but he's in the inner circle of the Trudeau government, and he was within the Prime Minister's office at some point. We also know that organizations like the Bank of Montreal, for example, we don't know exactly how much money they've given, but they have openly said that grants were provided. And some of the academics who are involved with the Anti-Hate Network themselves, they, in the course of their day jobs, are obtaining grants that are significant amounts of money, six figures and up.
Okay. And Jerry Butts is Gerald Butts, and it's Trudeau's best friend. Now, people are saying the audio is cracking, but I think that is not on our end, everybody. So refresh if your audio is cracking, because I can hear both of us fine, and we're fine. Alrighty, so the Canadian Anti-Hate Network gets funding from a number of sources, but a lot of it, big chunks, from the Canadian government, the Trudeau government, to investigate.
I'll reiterate that that funding appears to have come to an end in 2022. I haven't obtained like a Freedom of Information request for anything new. On their website, they say that they're not presently receiving government funds, but without a shadow of a doubt, that was a huge chunk of money they were working with from, I think it's 2019 to 2022.
It's my mic. Hold on, it can't be my mic. Okay, I'm gonna tinker with some cables. And by the way, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, what level? I mean, what is the size of the infrastructure? So if they get six-figure grants from the government, what is it? 2 people, 3 people? So how long can that money last?
It's a very opaque organization. So we know a little bit about the board of directors. We know that there is an executive director, Evan Balgord, who is paid, presumably. There are other people identified as staff whose credentials and names cannot be verified. So I don't know how many there are, or I can't speak to that. It's just unknown information. So bottom line is, the money probably can go a fairly long way. And the other thing that I didn't mention is I have no knowledge of whether, like some of the board members, the Anti-Hate Network itself applies for or seeks to have contracts with public institutions, private institutions to provide training or toolkits or consultations. So that may be another source of income. We just don't know.
It's fantastic. Now, who are the principals at the CAN?
The chair of the Anti-Hate Network is Bernie Farber, who was formerly the president of the CJC, the Canadian Jewish Congress, which is defunct. It became a different organization. The founding members are him, Amira El-Gabawi, who she's currently I don't know her exact title, but she is with the government sort of as a special liaison on Islamophobia. So she's moved on from the Anti-Hate Network. Evan Balgord, I mentioned, who don't really know a ton about him. He might be John Tory's nephew. So that's the former mayor of Toronto. And he was formerly a vice president with the Canadian Association of Journalists. There's a lawyer, Richard Warman, who is well known for using litigation as a tool to achieve his political ends, what he would term as shutting down hate speech. Out of those decisions, there was at least, I think he had 10 successful cases at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, which basically there was a provision that has since been repealed that allowed private citizens to go after other private citizens for hate speech. And he used that and was the most prolific litigant under that provision. What came from that was the notion of the hallmarks of hate, which was endorsed in a Supreme Court decision. So an analysis that assists in determining whether something is hate speech. However, he also faced criticism from adjudicators, or at least one adjudicator at the tribunal, for himself infiltrating and participating in these forums and raising questions of to what extent did you contribute to this hate? To what extent is this a form of entrapment? So he is he's part of the board. I don't know his connection to the day-to-day. There is someone who is called Elizabeth Simons. I've not been able to verify anything about that individual. The same, there's someone called Hazel Woodrow. Haven't been able to verify anything. And someone named Peter Smith. Haven't been able to verify.
I knew that Warman's name sounded familiar. He is, in fact, the lawyer who filed a complaint against Keith Wilson. Code of conduct complaint filed against convoy lawyer. Ottawa human rights lawyer filed complaint with Law Society of Alberta. Yeah, I remember flipping out about this at the time. Let me just make sure that I'm right and not besmirching an innocent. Richard Warman, an Ottawa human rights attorney, alleges. Yeah, Warman is the one who filed a complaint against Keith for his statements made while he was representing the convoy. Warman files an ethics complaint in a province in which I don't know that Warman practices, but he might be, common law certified across Canada, never had any interaction with Keith Wilson, was never a client, files an ethics complaint against him, uses what we refer to as lawfare and ethics lawfare to silence his ideological adversaries. So that Warman, wonderful. So these are the people involved with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. I guess we get into the hate gate now. What happens, what does the con do to create this, this beast to be fought in Diagolon, Jeremy McKenzie? How does the government get involved with it? What do they do with that information? Give us the whole scandal, and then I'll ask questions as we go along.
So the first outlet to report on the Canadian Anti-Hate Network was a blog, Anti-Racist Canada Collective, which is run by Kurt Phillips, who's another board member. I neglected to mention him. He is a high school teacher who has spent, I guess, a decade or so undercover in different forums, obtaining information, writing blogs, kind of the judge, jury, executioner of whether people are far right or problematic in some way. So in 2020, after McKenzie, he did a one-man protest at an event where Omar Khadr, the former Guantanamo Bay detainee, was scheduled to speak. McKenzie, being a war veteran, took umbrage with him, with Khadr being allowed to be there, and sort of expressed himself. The video went viral. And shortly after that, a post appears that it looked like a fair bit of research had been done, or at least he'd been on someone's radar. And it included a series of links that can't be verified or undated. The provenance is unclear. And that was sort of the initial smear. Let
me pause you there, because some people might not know who Omar Khadr was. Omar Khadr was, he pleaded, a 15-year-old kid pleaded guilty to terrorism charges or participating in war. He was paid $10.5 million as a settlement from the Canadian government for mistreatment. I forget exactly what the mistreatment was. I think it was
the decade that he spent in Guantanamo Bay, and Canada sort of not doing its duty to repatriate him. He was a Canadian citizen who was taken abroad with his father, his family, and yes, participated. The guilty plea, came as a result of time spent in Guantanamo. So, take that sort of for what it's worth. And I can't speak to the facts of the specific situation, but it's messy, right? It's very messy.
Well, especially now that we know just how dirty, the government plays in terms of coercing confessions, you could take that for what it's worth. For whatever you think about it, the kid was 15 when it happened, pleaded guilty, spent a long time detained. Canadian government turned a blind eye and then paid him $10.5 million to settle it. Compared to how they've treated other people who they have detained for extended periods of time. So we could set aside that double standard. Pat King, 5 months in jail on mischief charges. We can make some comparisons that are not favorable. So that's who Omar Khadr was. Jeremy McKenzie's there, and then he becomes sort of a target for the Canadian Anti-Hate Network.
Well, for the ARC Collective, right? So a separate website, but one whose body of work was kind of subsumed by the Anti-Hate Network to the extent that they brought Kurt Phillips onto their team. And that's what gave them, quote unquote, credibility as anti-fascist researchers. So, fast forward a little bit, and it's the Anti-Hate Network that initially plants the seed of Diagolon as a militia of some sort. They are a bit equivocal in the language that they use, including when they speak to media, but words like militia, far right, accelerationist group, the notion that simply talking about civil war or the prospect of civil war or societal collapse, which we are not immune to in North America. If we think about how democracies or other regimes across the globe, that it's not unheard of for humans to devolve in that way, right?
Not only unheard of, virtually inevitable. It's happened to every great civilization. And it's almost like discussing that prospect, given the age of the American empire, it almost seems like it's on par with historical averages. So discussing history is somehow a militanist, whatever they want to call it. But yeah, those are the words they used for that.
Yes. And so those words stuck. McKenzie did not make things easy for himself by leaning into what he thought was an absurd joke, and did things that then became used as evidence that, look, they really are in fact doing this. They are having a weapons training camp. They are, organizing
it's so stupid. A weapons training camp, also known as training for hunting for the hunting season. I mean, they give it a scary name, militia, and then sometimes you can just break it out. Well, what's this militia? Oh, target practice. Oh, skeet shooting, but skeet shooting with a scary patch. Let me bring this up now. It's a good time to bring up in anticipation of this is, I don't know who this guy is in respect of the CAHN. I just know that he's in it.
In my opinion, police already should have been acting on some of these individuals a while ago, specifically the ones who've been calling for violence. Pat King, who I mentioned before, who's become one of the most vocal proponents of this, has previously said that, the only solution to, public health measures and vaccines is bullets. Right.
I'll pause it there because that's a lie. I mean, and anybody who knows that that's a lie. He didn't say the only solution was bullets. He said if they keep this up, somebody's going to catch a bullet, and that's a far different statement. Still ill-advised words to be using, but it's a lie. This guy, whoever he is, I mean, he'll say his name at the end.
That's Evan. That's
okay,
Evan Valgord.
Yeah, let's see. So a lie already. He did. Pat King never came out and said the only solution to this is bullets. I don't think many people would have defended that. He did say in a moment of frustration, and I had him on the channel. He said, "Look, he keeps this up. People are going to have their lives ruined. Someone's going to catch a bullet. It's a figure of speech in terms of someone's going to snap. Still, not wise words. But let's hear what the rest of this has to say."
Right. So we have individuals here who are espousing violence, and then all of a sudden,
false.
One day ago, himself. Individuals like Jeremy McKenzie are all of a sudden saying if there is violence, it's not us, it's some kind of false flag attack after, months and years of telling their supporters that there's going to be a civil war where this problem is only solved with bullets, or, they need to find, their enemies. Right. So
right.
There is kind of violent rhetoric surrounding this, and law enforcement needs to take a close look at it.
All right, we will watch and wait to see what happens tomorrow. Mike Millian, president of the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada, and Evan Balgord, the...
Okay, so that's it. I'd say lies on the wire. It's not just to defend them because I happen to think that they're not wrong, but talking about civil war collapse when you see what the government's doing is one thing. To say that Pat King came out and said the only solution to this is bullets is a lie, and I suspect most people are not going to go find the clip of Pat King, especially since it's very hard to find. Okay, so those are the people, that's the players, and where were we? So they are now going
just
after...
on the point, if I could, on sort of rhetoric and political discourse, I think that there's a ton of violent rhetoric that is being used quite casually. And I don't know if it's a social media thing where, people lean into hyperbole and are expressing themselves in ways that, to discern the intent. But what I have observed is, given how frequently McKenzie streams and the duration of the podcast and the nature of his tone and audience and the way that he relates to the audience, it's not a stretch to imagine things being cherry picked. And I think that sort of the receipts that are brought forward, when it's devoid of context, it's effectively useless.
Well, I say people's sensitivity to what they call violent rhetoric, when people associate 1776 with violent rhetoric, there certainly is a tone online. There's a tone in political discourse. I mean, when you have political officials saying get in the face and harass people, get in their faces, take to the streets, there's always been a violent-ish interpretation, and some have been more explicit than others. But it is interesting, like you take one clip out and you run it, catch a bullet, and then you get to bastardize what was actually said, and nobody even knows in the original context what it was said. That's how it works. And that's what the Canadian Anti-Hate Network is doing, funded by the federal government to demonize one of the most vocal opponents, I guess is the word, of the federal government, and then they use that to create a whole fictitious set of circumstances in order to justify violating civil rights and liberties. Okay, so McKenzie, how does it progress with the con, and then where does it
go? It's kind of the pattern that I described earlier, where media picks up on what anti-hate is saying, kind of relies on them as an expert source, and then those articles are read by the RCMP. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that the RCMP likely has its own bone to pick with McKenzie, because he has been very vocal about policing failures. There was that mass shooting in Portapique, Nova Scotia that occurred in 2020. He had a video that was a very scathing takedown and critique of what happened. His views were largely affirmed by the commission, the Mass Casualty Commission that came out earlier this year. But it presumably would have embarrassed the RCMP. Similarly, during the convoy, he was the source of text messages leaked to him that showed an RCMP group chat in which they were celebrating acts of violence against civilians. So, the RCMP, in doing its investigation, it is not a stretch to imagine that they were looking extra hard to find something to nail a guy who has been rightly critical of their institution.
And just to flesh out a little more, I know that my crowd knows a lot about the Nova Scotia shooting, but just to refresh it, McKenzie was, if not pivotal, one of the early persons to highlight not just incompetence, because that was the Nova Scotia mass killing that went on for like almost 20 some odd hours with a dude who was driving an RCMP car, which nobody knows if it was real or a replica, wearing a uniform. A man who, prior to the shooting, his killing spree, had withdrawn $400,000 from a private banking account that he had, which many people suggest you can only get if you're on the payroll of the government, that you don't have private banking, and you certainly can't withdraw that amount. So he called out not just incompetence, but potentially criminal negligence, or even worse within the RCMP. And he was, I think, the first and certainly the most vocal to do it, and had the receipts for it, and caused, quite a bit of a stir. During the convoy, he was also the one who broke the story. Yeah, he showed the text messages where they were making a joke about the horse and what might happen if the horse were to get injured and they'd have to euthanize. I forget exactly what the nature of the joke was, but it was RCMP people joking about how they're going to, either exploit tragedy or cause violence or whatever during the protest. Very embarrassing. And so it's not that it can't be underestimated. It's like, okay, motive and act have now come together. So the RCMP might have a bone to pick with McKenzie, definitively, and it might explain some of the bogus charges that he subsequently faced. But they then get to rely on, call it fabrications. Can you flesh it out? Actually, the Khan were relying on Twitter trolls, but there was something about members of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network LARPing online as Nazis and revolutionaries. Can you flesh that out?
Yeah, so that would be a reference largely to Kurt Phillips and his work with the ARC Collective, where he took on different personas. And this is information that Elisa Hannigan was privy to firsthand because she was volunteering as a contributor for that website back, many years ago. So she was aware of some of the tactics that he used. The most shocking example, I suppose, is posing as a Russian model to basically extract information from Paul Fromm, who is or was a former high school teacher in Hamilton, has openly espoused white nationalist views. So that's kind of, he was targeted for that reason, but he ended up receiving this erotica that, had a little bit of child porn in it, right? And nothing happened with this information. It was just, haha, look what I was able to obtain. Same with intimate images, things of that nature. And, the LARPing as neo-Nazis, in last year, in July of 2022, the Anti-Hate Network published a job description looking for someone to infiltrate white supremacist groups, produce 2 to 3 stories per week, be 100% factually accurate for $55,000 a year. And, it's kind of, you can be accurate, you can write a bunch of stories per week, and you can not get caught, but you can really only do 2 of the 3, right? And so the idea that civilians would be doing that under, like, with the blessing or at the mandate of that organization, and I don't know what came of that. I don't know who advertises undercover operations. Like the most charitable explanation is the job process, like the nomination process involves submitting pitches for stories. So maybe this was just a way to gather ideas for things to write about, is my hope, because otherwise that seems like a very dangerous thing to do. Either putting the individual at risk if they are in fact infiltrating violent groups, or dangerous because there will be an incentive to misrepresent and fabricate in order to meet a story quota. So that is that was openly published. I don't know what came of it, but it speaks to tactics that are underhanded. And the Anti-Hate Network also has a habit of relying in its articles on accounts that are unnamed. And, sometimes the information, it is what it is. It's a clip of a live stream or what have you. But the reliance on people who are concealing their identities, I find that that's incompatible with proper journalism.
It's unbelievable. I was going to swear, but I don't want to. There's no need. But it's flipping unbelievable. I mean, they're literally manufacturing the hate. I mean, they go pick on some dude who's already said some things. When you say that he was pretending to be a Russian model, I mean, this is catfishing in the sense that we're like pretending to be a sexy woman. I don't know who falls for this on the internet anymore, and who sent who the compromising information.
Paul Fromm sent the compromising information, which we're not distributing it because it is effectively, that's a criminal offense in itself. So take that for what you want.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is what the CAHN is up to. And then how does all of this interface with the Emergencies Act invocation, the Canadian government, and the Ottawa protest?
So I think it's important not to overstate the role of anti-hate or its characterization of Diagolon in invoking the Emergencies Act. However, if we think back to February 2022, statements that were being made in the House of Commons, in the Senate, by the public safety minister, there was absolutely this a hysteria, a frenzy surrounding Diagolon, where it was portrayed at face value as, a group that may be seeking territorial sovereignty, even though that on its face is absurd. And if we go back to the TikTok that you played earlier, there was an acknowledgement that, well, it's just a joke, but what's not a joke is the rest of it. In February 2022, the just a joke part, that wasn't even acknowledged. That was not acknowledged. It was taken all at face value. So the incident at Coutts, which for people who aren't familiar, there was a border blockade in Alberta, arrests that occurred, alleging conspiracy to murder police officers, a weapons cache that was allegedly seized, a tactical vest that had what appeared to be homemade Diagolon patches. There were other patches as well, and that information somehow didn't really make it into the media. There was this fixation on the Diagolon patches. Coutts was referenced by Commissioner Rouleau, who was in charge of the POEC. Coutts was referenced as an important factor in bringing in the Emergencies Act. But there wasn't a singular reason why it occurred. If we are thinking about holistically everything that was going on, Diagolon was a part of that.
I want to bring up the picture of the Coutts gun seizure, because there is a discussion as to whether or not I can't see it clear enough here. There's a discussion as to whether or not it was even a tactical, like a ballistic vest. I can't see it here. It's down there on the right. So this green thing, I don't know if I'm actually using my cursor to circle it, but it's unclear as to whether or not it's even a ballistic vest or, just one of those exercise vests, fishing vests. But those are the two patches that the media, CBC, displaying the evidence for the world to see as the investigation is ongoing. That's what they claimed was the connection to this alleged conspiracy to murder an RCMP officer in Coutts and Diagolon. And Caryma, I've covered the Coutts 4 extensively, had Jason Levine on, so the crowd knows what I think is a political persecution and an absolute outrageous injustice, which employed, oddly enough, similar tactics to what the CAHN did with that white nationalist guy. An attractive young cop meeting with a non-recorded conversation over beers to get admissions that they would then use against these 4 people. So everybody knows.
I don't have my finger on the pulse of that case. What I can say is that a series of emails uncovered in the FOIPOP showed that things were a little bit ass backwards, in that public safety minister at the time, Marco Mendicino, he went on television saying that, there's strong connection between what happened in Coutts and a leader who's in Ottawa, which was ostensibly a reference to McKenzie. And then RCMP was asked for comment on that. And they were scrambling to try and put together an explanation for those comments, and ended up relying on a Global News article. So they're quoting the media back to the media in order to bolster what the public minister said. And it's just, that's not the sequence of events that we want to see in a crisis.
No, but, and the Global News article is referencing the experts, and the experts are the CAHN. I mean, it's the Spider-Man meme in real life. It's Mendocino says something, cites Global News as the source. Global News cites the experts. The experts were funded by the government that just cited it. I mean, it's exactly like what they did with, not to get too political, but with one of the Trump the investigations where they had the Steele dossier that they leaked to Yahoo News, and then the FBI and secret courts relies on the article from Yahoo News, which was based on their own leak to them of this bunk story to justify getting warrants. I mean, it's the same wrap-up smear, wrap-up propaganda that we've seen everywhere. Was this the portion of the 15-minute report that you detailed in the memo, in the, what are we calling it, the tome? The 15-minute report where they said, we need something, go find us something.
No, the 15-minute report was a separate report. That was a request from higher ups to have some sort of briefing or analysis. It ended up being pretty much a copy paste job. And, I understand sort of the in a high stake environment where it's time sensitive, there's a lot of pressure that goes with that. So this isn't a knock on the people who were assigned that task, but I expect my government officials to be relying on thoroughly researched and sourced information, not something that's just cobbled together in an urgent fashion.
All right, so I mean, I guess and McKenzie is going to be coming on in a few minutes. We're going to get all three of us together and talk for a bit. Do you have anything to leave for soon?
I don't have a hard stop, so I'm happy to.
Okay, cool. So now, all right, so we got Mendocino making the statement about, I remember people during the convoy saying, Viva, do you know who Jeremy McKenzie is? Why aren't you talking about this? They just talked about Diagolon, a meme thing. I had no idea at the time, but Mendocino says this is very scary, this is very risky, this militia, Diagolon. Then they say, well, what the heck are you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about a Global News article. The Global News article is citing the experts. That turns out to be con. So this is the environment. And the culmination of all of this is what ultimately? What role did Diagolon and the Canadian Anti-Hate Network's role in making this the boogeyman play in the invocation of the Emergencies Act?
It appears to have been a factor that weighed in favor of Trudeau's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act. McKenzie will probably say this himself. As far as chain of command goes, Trudeau presumably was relying on law enforcement, his public safety minister, to identify and assess and triage threats, and the information that he was provided. We don't know exactly what intel there was. If we're going by the FOIPOP, it was probably a bit shoddy. And if he took that at face value, in a leader's position, I think that it's a bit hard to criticize that. There are other things to be criticized. But, Rouleau, in referencing Diagolon, accepts that it was a threat. And just a point on the commission and procedural fairness, because McKenzie was, in remand at the time, he was not, he testified from a jail cell, and there was no prospect of him cross-examining or applying for standing to cross-examine any of the countless people who referenced Diagolon or him. So there was a lot of evidence led before the commission that was untested because he didn't have standing to challenge it, including an affidavit that was submitted after his testimony from Evan Balgord, the executive director of Anti-Hate. And Jeremy's lawyer wasn't even aware that happened, let alone have a chance to push back against those allegations. So the truth-finding function of the commission was compromised by these shortcomings.
Okay, now I'm gonna show everyone the report, and then I'm gonna give everyone the link, although I think everyone has it already. Let me see here. The Hategate affair. Has Hategate started trending yet, Caryma, in Canada?
We've been trending since Tuesday. So today is Friday. We're on day 4, I guess. And, you know, in trying to raise people's awareness about what I see as a real issue in the way that our institutions were interacting with each other and civilians, you know, it's my objective to speak with as many people as possible and kind of break through the echo chambers that we have built for ourselves, because this is an issue that it transcends politics. As much as someone may dislike McKenzie or find, you know, things he says distasteful or abhorrent, you know, the threshold that we have in Canada is criminality. And he's not been charged with hate speech or sedition or terrorism or any such offenses. And so crucial to be able to look at this situation and say, that could be me. That could be me. And that's why this is important.
Well, now I ask as a joke almost, but I'm not even sure it's a joke. It could be you. Have you found yourself at the receiving end of Canadian anti-hate network defamation? Have they accused you of anything that they've accused others of yet?
Yeah, that's how I ended up in this position. You know, I was one of the people, honestly, who reflexively says, you know, and this was probably in 2020, 2021, oh, the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, they do good work, right? That's just the reflexive response when an organization calls itself anti-hate. I don't like hate. So if someone is anti-hate, that's presumably a good thing, even if I don't know the specifics of what that organization is up to. You know, I've seen them cited in the news, so they must be legit. And that was my mindset until I became a target. And I know myself well enough to know that I did nothing to warrant the attention that I got, the harassment that I subsequently received. And, you know, it's ironic that that is what put me on a trajectory to reach out across the aisle and talk to people who I may otherwise, you know, have not wanted to associate with or take that risk. And, you know, that's truly how we landed here today. So.
Now, where it was published, the report, I shared the link. It was published, the link to it on Crier Media. That's where the primary source is?
Correct.
Okay. And what do you have now planned for the future? I mean, where do you go from here?
That's a good question. There's a lot more that could be written or said about, you know, the stuff that we covered. So there are other threads. We could get much more granular about some of the people involved. You know, but for now, I think that this high level message, which, you know, tome is a fair descriptor. It ended up being a lot longer than we thought we were going to write, but we had a lot to say. So we're just going to sort of focus on the work product that we have right now, and just continue to keep an eye on the situation.
All right. Now, Jeremy was in the backdrop and dropped in and out. Have you been in touch with Jeremy about during the context of this and drafting it?
I mean, I took his quotes, you know, I asked questions kind of along those lines. That's how we were able to put together this narrative. So, yeah. And
have you had any blowback from people who you might have otherwise considered allies in this era of politics?
I've come to stop expecting things from people. So, you know, I see it as people who read it with an open mind, and the reception from that has been very positive, and that is, you know, across the political spectrum. And there are others who have entrenched their views, who may find it difficult to resile from positions that they have taken, and so characterize this as something it's not. It's not an endorsement of Diagolon. It's not a defense of Jeremy McKenzie. This is a look into, you know, what can go wrong if we aren't rigorous about ensuring separation of powers, ensuring that there's, you know, no political interference, ensuring civil liberties.
It's an amazing thing where, like, yeah, but even by virtue of what they've done, even if it turns out that Diagolon is not only not guilty, but actually guilty of being a positive influence and helping people have gotten through the last 3 years of madness, it puts people in a position where nobody is ever going to feel comfortable saying, I've got no problem with Diagolon. I actually think they might have done some good because of the way they've been defamed, even if it was totally inaccurate. And in that sense, it's still, the objective has been achieved. Do you know, so now you know that the Canadian Anti-Hate Network says we're not taking any more money from the government, or at least we haven't taken any as of 2023, let's say that. Do you have any broader objectives of ending the organization or making it such that that organization ceases to exist because of the harm that it's done?
I don't think they're credible, and I don't think that news sources should be relying on what they have to say. So to the extent that they continue to be quoted or treated as a source for information or resources, I'm going to be raising this.
Fantastic. Okay, now, Caryma, where can people find you, and what can they do to support what you're doing?
I'm primarily on Twitter. I'll go down with that sinking ship. My handle is Caryma Rules, which is what I've put here, CARYMARULES. And for more information on this, we have a website that's being constructed, hategate.ca. So people can check that out. We'll post updates on there. And there's donation function if you're so inclined. We did this, on our own, unsubsidized, just because of our experiences, and this felt like an important thing to do. So, help us continue to do freedom of information requests, to continue to pull threads out of this report, and that's the most we can do.
Amazing. Caryma, we will be in touch. Keep in touch and keep up the good work. Godspeed.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good one. Okay, people. I see Jeremy in the backdrop, but I want to do one thing beforehand because I just got a DM from one Derek Smith, who wrote the book. He wrote the kids' books that are critical of Trudeau, and apparently he's got a new book. Hold on just one second. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to give everyone the Amazon affiliate link so that if you go buy this book, I'll get 5 cents a book off Amazon. But this is the new book before we bring in Jeremy. Young Kid's Guide. Get this out of here. Young Kid's Guide to Grooming. This is Derek Smith and Cade Knipe, illustrator. Oh my goodness. It's the new book, people, in the trilogy. He had one for, criticizing Trudeau. I think he had one criticizing Jugmeat. And now he's got a new book out. I'm going to give everybody the link in the Rumble chat and Locals chat. Here it is, people. Amazon affiliate link. Yes. If you go buy it, you could, I say go buy it. People don't want to support Amazon, but you're actually supporting the creator. And if you use the Amazon affiliate link, even better. Okay. Jeremy McKenzie is in the house, and he's going to give us his feedback on what has been going on with him. He's looking good in the small screen that I have. Looking good, looking young. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Jeremy, sir. Oh, hold on. We're going broad. What the hell is that in the background, sir? That's an act of war.
Yes. Yes, that's all I can say.
Jeremy, now, not that I feel emboldened. I showed it when I got it, but I showed it yesterday. Now that the Canadian Anti-Hate Network has been exposed for what they are, I still don't know who sent them to me. Hold on, let's get in here. But I keep everything that people send to me. The ring.
Because you're a terrorist now. This is the rings of power. And when we have many of these, 5 were given to men, and 6 to the dwarves and so on. So it's
like a Super Bowl ring for a game that I've barely played in.
That was my friend Derek Harrison. He came up with that idea. He thought it would be hilarious to sell, these big honking Super Bowl type rings as like a fundraiser. They were like 10. They didn't cost very much to produce. They're knockoff rings, but it was a fun. Rather than just be like, hey, give us money for legal fees and stuff. He's like, I'll give you something, right? So he put a lot of effort to get all this done, and he got us a lot of money for my defense. So thanks to Derek very much for that, and everybody else that bought one. Thank you very much.
I didn't buy it, but
somebody did.
I know. So we did my best to help you with what you were going through. So Jeremy, first of all, let me ask the obvious question. In as much as there can be some form of vindication in a system where there can be no justice, How vindicated do you feel having read this report from Caryma and Elise Hannigan?
I think they did a great job. I think they did I couldn't believe what they'd done in such a short time, just, 5 or 6 days or something from when I, gave her the documents. And I thought, she'd been paying attention to a lot of this for a long time. She's, familiar with all the players and everything that was, going on. She'd been following my court cases and stuff. So she was the perfect person to tell the story, really. So I just, let her do it and answered whatever questions and stuff she had. And I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out. I had, you hope for the best, but the what was revealed in these FOIPOP document dump is outrageous. It's more than I expected, but it's about what I expected, I guess, in the sense that this is basically what I've been saying for 2 years, that this is what's going on. I've been saying, people ask me, what's with the militia army, or what's with all of the terrorism, or whatever it is. When they broach the subject, I would say, well, listen, this is what's actually going on. And they'd say, oh, yeah, the experts have said this, and I read this in the news. And I said, I know it sounds impossible. However, I assure you this is true, because I know what I've done and I know what I've not done. I know what the people around me, what I've witnessed and what I haven't. So this is, this is just, it's good. It's nice to see that now we have a smoking gun that, my friend Alex was saying, Ferryman's told the last couple of days, so many of these freedom groups were trying to prove and say, what was the cause of the Emergency Act? What was the, what was the impetus? What was the button to push something? There had to be an overall, you've got, there were rapists. No, there weren't. Well, there was arsonists. There's not. There was all of these things. Well, there's this militia though. And all right, good enough, I guess. And they just ran with it. And, it's exactly what is described in these documents. Everybody, called us crazy. But I knew it was going to come to this sooner or later anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter how long you can run, the truth, is forever, and it will catch up to you sooner or later. But I, feel good for the people that stood by me and put themselves out there, like yourself and many others who, kind of lent their name to saying, I believe this guy. I think this is nonsense, at risk of, they don't know what I know, and they didn't know all of this stuff. And it's like, I could have turned out to be a liar. I could have, and then they would look ridiculous, have egg on their face. And that, would suck for somebody who put their heart in the right place and trying to do the right thing. So for those people, I'm very grateful and thankful, and people like yourself and all my supporters. And I hope they feel good about it.
What the amazing thing is, we did our first stream where we went over your story. I think it was like 3 or 4 days before the next scandal of what I believe are lies of tweets came out on Twitter. And everyone's like, oh, you had this guy, he beat up a woman on your channel. How do you feel now? It's like, first of all, A, that story came out after I interviewed him, and B, I spent 3 hours with this guy. If he's lying to me, he's a very convincing liar, and I'm a pretty decent judge of character. But for those who don't know, I think everybody out there does know, but just tell it, you're not a schnook, you're not someone with a checkered past. You're an actual military veteran who put life and limb on the line in defense of country and citizens. And until now, as far as I remember, never had any run-ins with the law, criminal records.
No.
And the shit only hits the fan when you become critical of the government and expose the deep, corruption and incompetence of the RCMP. Give us the 30,000-foot elevator pitch as to who you are and your military experience.
Well, I did 14 and a half years, and I only intended to do a little bit, but the war happened, and it was right around, I got in when I was 16, 17 years old. And, you get the TV filling your head with all kinds of ideas of we're being attacked by Muslim invaders and it's a holy war and there's terror. You remember what was going on, and you're a 16-year-old kid and people are upset and scared, and you're growing up and you want to prove yourself in the world, and you want to step up and say, I will fight these people for you. I will defend this place, and how much to go through all of that and to see, everything that we did, which, doesn't feel good in retrospect. A lot of, things that have come out since that people have learned about what this wars were really about. To then come home and, try to fix some things and try to tell the truth about some things you've learned in your experiences. And then, and again, be doubled down and attacked again by the same, people you had signed up to defend. And it was just kind of a sense of, I feel good that this is out there now, but, it was like, how much do I have to bleed for this before you understand that I mean well, my heart's in the right place here. I'm not, when I think of Canada is the people that live here. It's not the magic dirt or a building or an office chair somebody sits in. It's the men and women, the people that live here, my friends and family and everyone else's. And to say that like I'm intending to destroy I'm going to kill these people, I'm going to attack, I'm going to commit terrorism and violence, like that's, you know, the opposite of you know, the kind of, I've been trying to protect this and kind of my whole life. This is just what I've want. Some people want to play guitars, you know, some people want to do different things, and this is just what I ended up doing. And when I got out of the Army, I started doing the podcast, and you know, I'm a passionate guy. I get fired up about things, and I have kind of a humorous way of communicating sometimes. So I just combined them both and made it a show, and it was successful, and I ran with it. Not everybody liked it. So some of these people decided we're going to turn you into the nuclear hot potato we use for political reasons, to get funding, to pass laws, to do all of these things. And it was kind of a game of chicken. It was like, you know, who's gonna back off first? And I refused. And it got to the point where it escalated, where, you know, now I'm in jail. I'm being hauled across the country on a national warrant for a common assault charge, which was eventually stayed anyway.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into that. Let me just bring up the evidence here. This is from February 15, 2022. Anti-hate experts concerned about possible neo-fascist involvement at Alberta trucker convoy. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network tweeted on Monday that gear seized by police at Coutts included a plate carrier with Diagolon patches. I mean, the list goes on, because all you have to do is just Google Canadian Anti-Hate Network and Diagolon, and you'll see the years of propaganda and lies that we now know the story of because of that expose. Okay, so hold on. Tell the world now, when were you first charged with something? What has happened to those cases? What's gone on with Morgan? You've been debanked because of what you've been accused of. What's your situation now?
She's been debanked as well. So I was first arrested in January 2022, right before the convoy, like a couple of weeks prior. And I was, you know, in the police disclosure files, they're like, oh, he's planning to go to the convoy, so we better get him soon. Like they were planning to, you know, wrap me up in some things. And that case has been stayed as well.
What were you arrested on in January prior to?
In January, well, there's kind of two cases sort of that stemmed out of, you know, basically a week of silliness. And one was in Cape Breton. That one has been stayed. That was for two or four, I can't remember, firearms charges that, you know, the day of the trial, never mind. And then the others are ongoing, and I have two other cases that are ongoing, and some of them are, there's overlap between some of the characters and people involved, and some of the ones that have since been dismissed and the ones that are ongoing. So I can't really, you know, for strategic reasons, you know, but for sure. When it's all over, I'm more than happy to, you know, explain to everybody what's going on.
Which ones have been stayed is the term for the charges withdrawn?
Yeah.
Which ones?
The Saskatchewan case and the some of the firearms charges in Nova Scotia.
And so you get to the date. Was it literally at the day of the trial?
That was, I think it was for a Monday morning. We had to go, you know, for trial, and it was like a Friday evening. The Crown called and was like, you know, kind of kicking rocks, like, well, I think we'll maybe just, you know. So, yeah, I can't really, I don't know I can or can't say about that at all. But yeah, that was
okay. That's what happened. So you don't go to trial on some of them. You have yet to be convicted on any of them.
Yeah.
And you were used as Diagolon based on that one patch on that vest, which we don't even know if it's a ballistic vest or a fishing vest, how it came into.
Yeah. There's a lot of people talking about things they don't understand, I've noticed. Like a ballistic vest, what does that mean? A ballistic vest means it has ballistic defensive capabilities. There's armor plate in there. There's fragmentation, you know, insulate. It doesn't have any of those things. The RCMP even knows what those are. I don't know. I don't know. It didn't appear to look that way. The way they were sitting on the tables and stuff on the picture. If they would have taken the plates out, laid them out, and taken pictures of all this and stuff. And no one's done that with the property they've taken from me, curiously enough. But in that photo, I took a lot of. It was the whole thing was very strange, and I criticized it at the time as such, and saying, this is all very bizarre.
I want to get I need to get the picture so that we can see this once and for all. If I save the picture. Not save image as. Okay, here we go. I can do it like this. I'll do RCMP.
There was something else I think that Caryma noticed again. They did a great job. And also what they did to, I think it's worth mentioning, Eliza Hannigan as well. If you read through this expose that Caryma and her put together, what they did to her was equally more, in my opinion, disgusting what they did to me. I think she's a more of a victim of these people than I am.
Explain it while I do this here in the backdrop.
Yeah. Well, they've got a history again as well with Kurt Phillips and this. They used her as a kind of a teenager. I think she was about 18, and part of this Heritage Front, / CSIS pretend neo-Nazi group that they were using to entrap people and honeypot people for, oh, look at the Nazis we found that we created. Give us money. We need more. We need a bigger agency. And She ended up being used and abused by them and thrown away quite a bit. They made a movie. I made a little movie about her life story and basically lifted all of this and then sued her for it or something. It's crazy. It got really. You'd have to go read it. It's really insane, and you'd think it was crazy. So if you think what happened to me is bad, it's and why it was included as well is because this isn't the first time. This is what these people do. It wasn't an accident. This is their function. This is the point of them.
The MO, it's the same MO as the Anti-Defamation League in the States. It's the same MO as the SPLC. I mean, there's the hate, the racism, the anti-Semitism is in such high demand. They have to manufacture, fabricate it so they can justify their own existence, or at the very least, exacerbate it, because when you start looking at some of the players involved in this, you know damn well what some people are going to think and conclusions are going to come to as to who is sowing discord among society as a whole. Here, I got the picture now. This is
one of the Americans I talked to said you should call it the Northern Poverty Law Center. It's very good.
Now, why I want to highlight this, because as I say it out loud, this is the vest. We're going to get pixelated. All of this was thrown together. Like, we don't know where any one piece of evidence was found, as far as I know. We don't know if that vest had no relation to firearms where it was found. It could have been found with a fishing pole. But they throw it in.
People do use them for these things. I know guys that go on hikes with stuff like this because they put weights and stuff in it for fitness training, and it's like it's a vest, it's a backpack, it's a. About it is nefarious? It's green and it looks scary.
Well, I had one of those 40-pound vests that was stacked with weights. I would jog with it in public, but then it was like, you look like you're wearing a bomb. And it's like, I'll put it under my shirt. And then it looks like I'm just like bloated. And then everyone's like, also, it's bad for you. Don't jog with a 40-pound vest on. I use them for fishing. You have them. They have pockets. You put your... So anyways, okay, I just wanted to highlight that.
It's a culture thing. I mean, in the Army, we would have guys running around with the base on them for training and stuff, and the guy would run by you, but you could tell he doesn't, the guy doesn't even have plates in, weak. He's just running to look like he's running hard, but he's not even wearing plates. So it's versus the civilian street, someone calls a SWAT team because a man's wearing a vest they don't understand. It's just, we've got a very soft people, and they're very easily frightened. It's like a world of skittish, forest creatures.
Oh, yes. You know what they say about soft people? They create hard times, Jeremy.
They do, and I sometimes we feel like we might be living or heading into some rougher ones, but it's the cycle, like you said. I was listening a little earlier. These are the wheel turns. Every so many hundreds of years. The average lifespan of a country is about 200, 250 years. Things fall apart. People fight. It goes to hell. It happens. And part of what I've been talking about. Oh, they're planning. I'm saying I don't like the situation. I don't like the weather forecast, as it were. And I think you should probably take that into consideration. Maybe start planning accordingly, because the cost of not doing so, and it does happen, you get blindsided, means your family and you don't make it. That's not good. I don't want that to happen to anybody. So let's raise awareness about this so maybe we can avoid it, rather than just quietly shut up, eat cheese, and let the government run everything into the ground until we're all starving in the streets.
The very idea of pretending it's verboten to talk about it. I mean, at the social scale, you have the fall of civilizations, but even on the what is it? The micro or the macro? The whole expression, what is it? Elbow sleeve to elbow sleeve in 3 generations. I forget what the exact, or rice paddy to rice paddy in 3 generations. The idea being, one generation of a kid grows up in poverty, works hard, becomes wealthy, raises a family, and they manage. But then the third generation has forgotten what it took to make that in the first place, pisses it all away, and then lo and behold, the third generation is back to the rice paddy. It works at a global social scale as well. And then, yes, prepare for, or if it's going to happen. The accelerationism is so stupid. It's like, the idea that if something bad's going to happen, let's get it over with, is not a threat. It's an observation.
Well, they just lazily took this, so there's a definition called militant accelerationism. I think the FBI maybe came up with this term, but there's a specific, what does this mean? They think it means exactly this. It means when people are trying to hasten the collapse of a state or a government, so they go about destroying food supplies, power stations, anything that's going to create, amplify the chaos and then, hasten the collapse. That's what so they're like, oh, well, we'll just drop the militant part, call it accelerationism. I'm not really explaining what it means. It sounds bad, though. It sounds scary. So we're being propagandists. We're only appealing to emotion, because that's what we do here at the Edward Bernays Center of Anti-Hate. And we're going to appeal to everyone's emotion and make things sound scary. We'll play some, some ominous undertone piano music or something while we run a Fifth Estate slow motion piece where we cut the horse trampling off at the last frame and then take an out of context clip of Pat King. And then we'll have Evan Balgord there and be like, I want to use bullets. It's crazy. It's absurd. They should be humiliated. They should be embarrassed. And these people shouldn't have work in this country. They're very malicious.
They're malicious. Let them get
malevolent.
sued. let them get sued the way any ordinary organization or people would have gotten sued.
Yeah, they should
Certainly, it's not a question when they had hashtag ban the ADL in the States with Elon. I was like, you don't need to ban them, but they sure as hell should not get government funding. They should be sued like every other person or organization that maliciously defames people. The heck was that?
Cops.
I think no one.
Shut down.
This stream is over. No, they should. They should just be sued and be exposed to the consequences of their legal, judicious consequences.
I think what part of the culture that some people maybe don't understand, because ban they go to the extreme on purpose. It's like ask for the moon, and if they give you half of that, you're like, that's really what I was looking for anyway. We just want some accountability. We want some sense. We want some whatever. So you go all the way to the end and demand this, we ban them, just everything. And they're like, well, we can't do all of that. But if you ask for just a little bit, you won't get anything.
Well, the only reason I don't like the hashtag is because for the side that says we don't want to ban, we don't want to deplatform, we don't want to cancel, to adopt that, and I appreciate it is not a hyperbolic. It's a strategy. Yes, nobody really means ban the ADL. How do you ban a private organization?
Some people do, and they've done some criminal things. Like they've done a lot of really insane. So it's morally, this is something people need to look at, and there isn't laws really, or is there? I don't know. It would take some kind of scholarly legal mind to really look at this and go, so I made the example. So you could take someone like Bernie Farber or Evan Balgord or the Anti-Hate Network, and you can take something like some other cases I'm aware of where someone can, that was a mean tweet. That is criminal harassment. I'm charging you you are criminally harassing this person because you tweeted something they didn't like. Okay, fair enough. That's criminal harassment. So what is it the Anti-Hate Network has done when they spin up an animus, nebulous, toxic cloud around someone to destroy their life intentionally on purpose?
It's targeted harassment.
Right.
It's defamation. It's tortious interference with business contracts. It's everything, and they do it government funded. But it's the circle jerk, this vicious circle, the wrap up smear that just blows my mind. Where in Canada, somehow we think we're immune from like January 6th type corruption. We think we're immune from Russiagate type collusion hoaxes. It's the exact same thing, but on a smaller scale, where the international community doesn't care, but Canadians bloody well should. What's your situation now? So you have a few pending trials. Do you have any dates scheduled?
There is one in the.
It's tough to keep track.
They
don't miss them, Jeremy.
There's a lot of disclosure motions, like things keep happening and the things keep coming up, and I'm here to win. I'm not like looking for. I'm paying go get it, go investigate this, hire this guy, go get this, turn over every rock they show you, everything. I don't care. Because I want this. This is my life, and this is my reputation, and everything and not just for me, but for everybody that believed in me and supported me. They need to be vindicated for their beliefs. I believe that when people put their faith and energy in something, that they should be rewarded for it, and not just taken advantage of or something. But so that's going on. I'm working on 3 other ones. There's one is scheduled for the Saskatchewan was for January, but that one's gone. And then there's I don't know if they even have dates yet. It wouldn't be until next year, in 2024 anyway.
Now, I'm going to have to broach the subject because I don't want to feel like I'm not because of whatever.
Yeah.
Coots 4 and that whole the broader issue around that. First of all, are you in touch with the guy with the Coots 4? Is there any resentment between you and them, between them towards you? Has some of the rumorings affected their perception of you or the relationships that you might have had?
Not to my knowledge. I only know the only one I've talked to is Lysak, Chris Lysak. He was a popular or he was a big fan of the podcast, and he was I met him a couple of times at these barbecues and stuff. Nice guy, sweet guy. Met his kids, met his daughters. Good people. And you feel terrible that this happened. Basically they use this narrative to this guy is big and scary looking, and we'll kind of slam him in there. I haven't spoken to the other 3 guys. I don't know them. I think one of the other ones may have been a fan or a friend of Lysak's or something, but I know the other 2 guys from a hole in the ground. Never met them, never talked to them. I don't know anything. So that's as far as the connection goes. I have spoken to Chris a couple of times, a little bit more lately. He's, I said, yeah, call me anytime, man. If it helps you pass the time, because I've done this myself now a couple of months in there, and it's just, it's a great way to pass the day if you can get on the phone for a couple of hours and just call people and just pass time and have these conversations with people and keep your mind going, or help you from going crazy. So I was like, anytime you want. So he's called me a couple of times, and we chit chat about some certain things, and they're anticipating this envelope opening coming soon when this judge returns from his vacation.
Yeah, it was supposed
Coming
to
up.
be actually. Yeah, what next week? September 15th.
I think so. I think he's back from vacation. I don't think they have a date until November or something though. But from what I understood, it sounded like there's some serious problems or flaws with the case. It sounds like, and the judge kind of went, "I'm going to go on vacation for a month, and when I get back, maybe things are different." You know, because you know what I mean. You know, that's how I interpret it. Everyone's like, "Why is he just going to go on vacation?" I'm like, "Well, we don't know exactly what's going on."
You know what?
You don't want to ruin careers, and you know, if you don't have to, right? So it's like the door is open for this to all go away if you want, you know. So I'm going to be on fishing when I get back. You know, I think that's maybe what's going on, but we'll see.
Well, that's a very interesting interpretation. There are some who say it's total corruption. How dare the judge go on vacation when this...
I don't think so.
Well, and then Jason Levine is the more favorable. He says, look, it was already scheduled. Dates are hard to find.
Right.
Jeremy, your interpretation, I dare say, is the most plausible. Their shit's fucked up, and you guys better fix it. And here,
I thought we wouldn't swear on this show.
Let me go on vacation. Oh,
now that I'm here, everybody can swear.
No, dude, I've lost my filter swear. I don't want to. Oh yeah, well, sometimes I called someone a fucking idiot and a wild piece of shit on Twitter because the guy said September 11 was a terrorist attack, January 6 was a terrorist attack, and I said you're a fucking idiot. Like
it's so disrespectful.
There's disrespectful, and then there's like I think some of us are more or less connected to September 11th, depending on whether or not you actually had family in New York, and those who didn't have friends, and those who didn't have friends, everyone has a connection to New York. You want to fucking you want to be that dumb? I'm sorry. I've lost my swear filter.
Yeah. It was a horrible day. That was one of the worst days. I remember I was 15 years old and watching my mom crying on TV, and I didn't know what was, but it was evident something very serious was happening. And then we watched the second one happen live on TV, and I was like, we're going to war. Yep.
Jeremy, I was 21. I would say 20 or 21. It was a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready to go to McGill philosophy class. And then I get up and I was still living at my parents' place. I go lie down on my dad's bed and I see the TV running and there's smoke coming out of the building. And then I'm watching, and then I forget what exactly happens, but then there's some talking head on television.
Yeah.
And then we see a second plane fly into it in real time. And this woman says, is it possible there's some beacon that's drawing the planes to the buildings? And the guy that she's talking to is like, no, it's pretty clear that this is deliberate. Yeah. And then, I got my brother in New York. I got my sister in New York. And I'm on the phone with my brother as the first tower starts falling. And he's freaking out because he sees it like 3 seconds before me. And he starts screaming on the phone. And I was like, what's going on? And then I see it on my TV.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm going to have some dipshit, Christian Snell or whatever, Tristan Snell, tell me that January 6th was 9/11. You
2,800 people died, man, and that war killed millions of people that followed on and sued it. Millions around Iraq, all over Libya, Africa, the Middle East, and now we've got the migrant crisis as a result. So people are now the violence in the streets in Europe and America and North America because of the migrant crisis. Like this is all connected to that event, that one event, that wound that went into the psyche of the Western world is still killing people to this day. And you're going to compare that to some people that walked around a building. You're an outrageous, silly person to think those things, and I know no one should ever listen to anything you say ever again. You're an idiot.
Yeah. No, and then the
not to say nothing of the hundreds of police officers and firemen that courageously, I guess I'll go in there and try to save some people at risk of my own life, and many of them did die. And it's like, but there was the time when Orange Man was bad and TV played scary music, and I got scared at home in my bed eating chips. So that's the same. Outrageous.
Outrageous. What's been your schedule now? You're doing the Raging Dissident regularly still?
I mean, when I can. It's been crazy the last few months, or even since I got out of jail, really. But it's I try to do 3 days a week, but it's not always feasible. It takes a lot out of you. I mean, I'm sure doing this a lot. Yep. It's it can be very emotionally draining, especially some of the topics and subject matter I get into, and it's it can be very personal sometimes. Especially recently 9/11 just passed, and an anniversary of a friend of mine that took his life last year. And again, it's that maybe he'd still be alive if we didn't have to go fight in this hellhole for no reason. We could be hanging out right now, or maybe we never would have known each other, but he'd be alive. Right. And it's like, this is just the stuff you live with, is it? And then to have people just flippantly say like, oh, it's the same thing. They have no idea what they're talking about. And the same, now you've got the Ukraine war and everyone's like, we have to Slava Ukraine. We have to, the people that are so enthusiastic and, want to support wars and we have to support, they're the ones that are the least qualified and know the least about what they're talking about. You should never be excitable or enthusiastic to engage in any kind of warfare at all. It's a very somber, thing that shouldn't have to happen, but.
No, and then you hear, it blows my mind. I just can't understand it, that the people who we now know have been definitively lying to us for decades,
Yeah.
The same people who know this still say but they're right now. They're right now. Like, oh
Yes.
they were wrong about the weapons of
always-
mass destruction, but they're right now. They were wrong about COVID, but they're right now.
Yep.
And they believe it. True. It's so true that they will. Oh, Jeremy, have you received any blowback on the interwebs after having been accused of being a Fed?
I bet. Yeah, I mean, you get harassment, you get people, saying, crap to you, and you got to have a thick skin to do this kind of thing. I'm sure you understand. Like, it's just you're exposed. It's like everyone's personal reality show. They pick people to follow, and then they just kind of, so you deal with stuff like that. But it also, damages reputation because once that's called Fed jacketing. It was invented by the FBI, I believe, in the 60s or 70s regarding it was the Black Panthers because they're having a tough time infiltrating them, gathering intelligence because, they're a Black power institution, and you've got the white FBI. Like, how am I going to sneak in? So they invented this.
How do you do, fellow Black
Hello,
Panthers?
other Black Americans. Like, is your name Paul? You're white as hell. I don't think he's going to fly. Black power. But so they, Fed jacketing, and what they came up with is like, they used to call they're masters of psychological warfare. These, the enemy, I would call it as a monolith. But so they would say, oh, well, these certain guys, they would just accuse them of being federal agents or make inferences and so on. And this creates paranoia and distrust. And then the group, starts looking inward and nobody trusts each other. They start fighting. And in this way, you've disrupted the group, just by leveling an accusation. They call it Fed jacketing or bad jacketing, where you'd have like your Black Panthers jacket, but underneath it says FBI, So this was kind of the plan that they've been doing. And this has been happening forever. And they started doing it to me. And then as soon as they did that, I was like, I got you. It's over. You got nothing left when you're down to this, because that was all they had on the Black Panther. At that time, it's like, well, we'll just accuse them of something and we'll try to. And now they're doing the same thing. People that I suspect are government affiliated, like B.J. Dichter and others like that, who seem to be running in these kinds of circles and also avoid all scrutiny, all consequences, despite their positions. But they flippantly and enthusiastically want to call people feds and stuff with no explanation and no evidence whatsoever. I've yet to see anything. And then our guys, I'll call him CRJ, is his an acronym for his online handle. He went and got this ATIP and with all this evidence and information. So we had to go, and then it's like you're guilty until you're proven innocent in this country, and we had to prove our own innocence and be like, see here, and where are all of these people with the Fed accusations? Where have you gone? Did I go? I went out of my way to expose all of this, and we went, and Caryma, and all of this had to happen because it's all, again, is just another layer of the psychological onion trick to. Like, how deep does it go? It's ridiculous.
Well, people use the term Fed in many ways. They're not necessarily mutually incompatible, but they could be like, oh, you didn't start off as a Fed, but now you're cooperating or collaborating with, so you become one. But they accuse Owen Schroyer in the States, or some people do, and I can see how some people can see it. But Feds typically don't go to jail, for 60 days. Feds don't get hauled across the country in solitary.
Yeah.
But
it's
then
if very hardcore to agree to that, like, Like The Departed, is that what we're going with? A Scorsese movie where it's like, we're going to give you an assault charge, you'll do 3 months, just so the Whitey Bulger guy, I think that's what the movie is based on, is Whitey Bulger's guys, just so they buy it, so they'd be like, well, who would go to prison for 3 months? Is that what you really think this is what's going on? Again, I had all this time in the military and all that, like, at what point does it become enough for you? It's like a heads you win, tails I lose situation. It's like some people are just never going to be convinced no matter what you say, no matter what proof you have to provide, no matter what. So I just disregard them because they're not serious people. They're not people that should be taken seriously. They're just ideologues. They're people that just, they're dogmatically aligned with whatever they've decided is true, and they'll stick to that no matter how ridiculous it gets. And that's how the crux of all of this was, I read somewhere, maybe it was basically force a tyrant to act like one. And I thought that was a really profound thing to say, where it's like, if I can show everyone who these people really are, then it'll be obvious. Instead of me just accusing them and they can go, oh, this is crazy. It's like, well, I'll set up a situation where you're going to have to, I'm going to put some pressure on you and see how you react. And in the end, what did the Canadian government do? Well, they acted like tyrants, didn't they? So
people were saying the video was freezing on Rumble's end. I get the final version saved on StreamYards anyhow, so I'll re-upload if there are problems, but just try refreshing. Jeremy, is there any other development that has occurred that I should ask you about that I haven't?
It'd be tough to think. I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, we've been pretty wrapped up in the HateGate stuff in the last few days, and I'm not sure. I've got some other court motions and stuff coming up at the end of this month, and then ongoing for the next probably 8 to 10 months. But
Well, you'll come back on when there's stuff that you can report on, develop there. Where can people find you? I mean, I think everybody knows, but I put your Twitter handle in the description. But where can people find you?
RagingDissident.com has all of my social media links, my Substack, Telegram channel, all of those things that I'm not banned from. All the old banned ones are still there, but you can, it's a once and done, and go get it there. And there's a shop you can buy some shirts and stuff, and we use that to, feed ourselves and what have you. So, we appreciate the support, and everything's just all in one place, RagingDissident.com.
All right, amazing. Thank you very much. I'm gonna cut. Ordinarily, I'd end with you, but I'm gonna read some Rumble rants and then go over to locals. First of all, I'll say this: I like you, and I think you are a good person. And if you make a fool of me, well, then so be it. But I've
got a lot of people that, Caryma basically expressed to say, so if you blow up a building now, I'm like,
oh, I can't control what you might do in the future. Don't do anything stupid. I think you're a good man, and you've done good.
I think she bought it, Viva. I think she bought it.
We're still live, Jeremy.
The mission is a go.
Yeah.
We will keep in touch, and with any updates, you'll come back on.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much for your support and sticking your neck out for me. And I don't know a lot of people. You were one of the first people that called me when I got out of jail, not for an interview or for any reason. You just wanted to see if I was doing okay and how and I appreciated that. It meant a lot to me. And you put up some of your own money and the fundraiser and everything. It just, thank you for doing that. And a lot of people were very grateful.
I'm a short man, and my neck
families.
The joke is I've got a short neck to stick out, but it's been my pleasure, Jeremy. So
thank you very much.
We'll keep in touch. All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going to do the Rumble rants here. Then we're going to go over to locals, and then I'm going to take a bit of a break because I'm going live with another Jeremy, the Quartering, at 1:00 on his channel. I'm still irritated about what people said was crackling, but I was listening to it on my end, and I didn't hear any crackling. And then someone DM'd me on Twitter, said, it wasn't that bad, Viva, calm down. But if there are trolls in there, and I know that there are, who want to distract my... See, now I hear myself talking. Oh, cripe, where did it... There it is, okay. Now I hear myself. Anyhow, I've got my neuroses under control, so even the trolls cannot distract me because I'm very much aware of my own mental... Oh, look at that ugly face, dear... And look at the hand gesture. That's it. Someone's going to accuse me of something. Maria Patel. $5 Rumble rant says, please let's not forget the coots for corruption in Canada's justice system. Political prisoners who have been in jail, often solitary confinement in Alberta, for damn near 2 years. 575 days straight now. We will not forget them. We will not stop talking about them. And all right, we got Mark Edmond says, crackle is very minor. It isn't bad at all. The funny thing is I was listening to somebody on Rumble this morning, and their mic was crackling to the point where like, okay, I'm going to change the channel. And Ooga Booga says, oh no, I'm an anti-Semite now with that hand gesture, Viva, and a racist terrorist. And when I make donations, it's in multiples of 18. The ADL's got my number, pun intended. And then we got, M. Sidloy says, and I can read it, Shana Tova David, which is Happy New Year because I'm fairly certain it's Rosh Hashanah. Starting tonight? I'm bad. I've lost track of the holidays because I've lost track of the changing of the seasons because in Florida, there's only one season. I wish you and your family a year of health, happiness, and success. Thank you. I'll take 80 years of health. Oh, forget the success part. I'll just take health and happiness because I think health and happiness equals success. Okay, good. And RGW says, intermittent, if one blip here or there, I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, the one I was listening to was unlistenable. It was... And I thought okay, anyhow, it doesn't matter. Awesome stream, Jeremy McKenzie, true hero of great honor, great courage and valor, all the respect. That's from Century 2020. Scambot says, thanks, Viva, much respect. Scambot, you have a very unfortunate name. You might want to... I'm joking. No, I'm not joking, but I think it's on purpose. Oh, did it freeze again? Anyhow, if it's freezing, I'm going to re-upload it because I get the clean video. Oh, let me just take this out of the screen here. I get the clean video regardless on my end through StreamYard. I'm going to go over to locals now. There's some comments there. There's some tips. Hold on one second. We're going to have, and I'll take a few questions there. Give our locals community an exclusive. We'll have some discussion. Boom, shakalaka. That's the link to Rumbles. Come on over. And, hold on. One last shameless plug. Get your merch, people. If you want I got my mug. And I got my shot glass. I got my mugshot shot glass and I got my mugshot coffee mug. Boom. What's going on here? Open. Make it bigger. Enhance. Look at that. It looks just as good in real life as it does on the computer screen. It's beautiful. Vivafry.com for the best merch ever. All right, we're going to end on Rumble. Come on over to Locals. And I broke Rumble, it seems. All right. The ceases has come in. This stream will be shut down now. Oh, no, hold on. Okay, we're still live on. Anyhow, the German jokes never get old. It's from The Simpsons. This exhibit is over. Does everyone remember that episode? Where they're looking at the crash test of the cars, and then Lisa says, wait a minute, those dummies are moving. And the guy goes, this exhibit is over. Anyhow, this stream is over. Thank you all for being here. Come on over to Locals, and then I shall see you on the quartering at 1 o'clock. Peace out, everyone. Locals, let me see here. Are we live here? I am on Locals with no problem. I remember audio still popping here, not a troll. You mother Capri. Goddamn dog God, son of a audio settings. All right. No, that's the camera mic. We don't want that. Default MacBook. Okay, we don't want that either. Now let's go. Oh yeah. Now we're back. And does everyone still hear popping? Your neuroticism is quite entertaining, I must say. Mel VS, try living with it. It's actually quite upsetting. No, not upsetting. It's quite irritating. Viva gonna pop a cap. You have to come to grips with it. It's gonna make you what's the word? The insecurity, the mental. You have to come to grips with it, and you do over time. Okay, Viva's still using MacBook confirmed. Yes, I am. No, I'm using no, it's a MacBook. It's definitely a Mac. I don't know if it's a MacBook. It's that thing with the. Oh, I can show you what it is. Yeah, look at this. Let me just make sure there's nothing embarrassing. Oh, there is something embarrassing. The Freedom Convoy, putting unity in community. It's much better than putting communism in community. Okay, there were some tips here that I'm going to answer the questions to. If it cracks, it's real. Okay, let me bring up the tips. View all, view tipped. Here we go. Okay, so we got grumpy old jock. Old, A-U-D-L jock. Trudeau the latest scandal, or another thing to be memory hold before the next election. This wouldn't impact Trudeau as an election. It just impacts the system as a whole. Canadians will only wake up after they don't have enough social credit to buy their weekly supply of bugs of their three new items of clothing. That was from Grumpy Old Jock. We got Jeanette Victoria says, still support the blue, $1 tip. I will reflexively support the blue, but be inherently skeptical of anyone in a position of authority. And reflexively meaning there are people who put their lives on the line to defend us as police, as soldiers, as whatever, as everything. And anyone who does that is braver than me. I know human nature and the type of people who might sign up for that. You know, people who will take that type of risk. There is a trade-off. For some, it's going to be honor, dignity, and pride. For others, it's going to be wielding that power in ways that only they can wield it. So you can support them and be skeptical, as I am, and will continue to be. Jeanette, thank you. Entry required says, the Canadian leftists and their drama teacher cheerleader have done more damage to Canada than I've personally witnessed by multiple natural disasters in Canada. Mr. Entry required, 1,000%. I always say, like, I could never have conceived that one man could cause so much damage to a nation. And everyone says, Viva, it's not one man. I understand that argument, and there's definitely an infrastructure there. But if there were another person in power, the damage wouldn't have been done. And it is unfortunately one man at the helm of that ship, even if there are other people working the mechanisms on the bottom, and even if it is someone else's ship. One man can sink the nation, in as much as one man could have saved a nation. And Justin Trudeau will go down as the man who nearly sunk or did in fact sink what was once the best country on earth. Entry required says, I don't know, and I don't know the whole story. But I've seen, in my opinion, Owen Schroyer go too far in the halls of Congress, which somewhat offends my conservative principles. It's an argument there. He might have actually, been too hyperbolic. But yeah, maybe the audio crackle is StreamYard was listening to the live stream last night and they were having the same issue. It's possible, just so long as there was a minor crackle and not what I heard this morning, which made it unlistenable. I noticed I had a crackle with Tamara Leach as well, but sometimes I think it's also connection. Thinboy Slick, Viva Fry, the crackling was real, but it sounds like your CPU not keeping up with your audio compression. I don't understand a word you just said, to quote Napoleon Dynamite. You may have a crashed process on your computer eating up all your CPU. Close a few tabs. I recommend you reboot before your stream again. Yeah, okay, I'm going to do that. And then we got entry required. Lenny Bruce is not a freak, and I am not a troll. Hold on, who's Lenny Bruce? Lenny Bruce. I know that name. Lenny Bruce. Lenny Alfred Schneider. Lenny Bruce was the stand-up comic whose life was destroyed by litigation towards the end. Yeah, okay, fine. I've actually never listened to any Lenny Bruce. I've just listened to Joe Rogan talk about Lenny Bruce at length. I'm going to go back and watch some of that. Okay. Lenny Bruce is not a freak. Okay, so now, I got a lot of notices on this channel about a weak signal. Interesting. Okay, that's from Tisiba. First of all, Caryma's amazing. I know people don't like fence sitting when they think it's good versus evil. I appreciate Caryma weighing her words, and I can read into those words where I will understand what she's saying, even though I might not pin her down to try to get her to say something that might unleash even more of a torrent than she's already experienced, but she's amazing. Okay, let me see here. Let me just refresh this. I missed this. Work gets in the way. Lenny Bruce was great in the 90s. Now, Lenny Bruce, hold on. Now I'm thinking of another Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce died. Alcoholism. Did he commit suicide or did he die of a self-induced suicide? Hold on. Let's go to Lenny Bruce. He was an American stand-up comic. Early life. Personal life. Obscenity arrests. No, that's a death and posthumous pardon. Oh, yeah. He was found dead in the bathroom of his Hollywood home. Lying naked on the floor, a syringe and a burnt bottle cap nearby. That's it. The process is the punishment. If you're not strong enough. Entry required says, I guess you never listened to Bill Cosby on LPs either. Nope. Did you happen to listen to George Carlin on LPs? I've listened to George Carlin, but only on the internet. LPs? What the hell's an LP? I know it's a long play, but I don't actually have any records. I don't have many records. Oh crap, I've knocked something over. Silent War, 5 times August. I haven't opened it. It's going to be worth money one day. It's going to be... How much did I pay for it? It's $50, I think. Anyhow, best thing I've ever bought. Let me qualify that. Best thing on vinyl I've ever bought. All right, 11:52. Now, let's see what we got going on here. I love records. My kid is into records, so I got... I got 2 Tom McDonald CDs signed on CD and was very happy to have gotten a used vehicle from an era where they have CD players still. Although that Volkswagen Touareg that we got also used, I just discovered after a year of having that frickin' car that there's a CD player in the glove compartment. What kind of silly German designed that car? I'm going to be driving and have to open the glove compartment to change a CD? My goodness. Baha, Pshaw, I say. Tasiba says, "Who's Lenny?" No, I know who Lenny Bruce was. I just didn't get I didn't piece the name together right away. Is President by me trying to sink the USA? I had observations which are politically correct observations as to the seeming political orientation of a lot of the blue checkmark Twitter accounts that are incessantly pushing Biden. I believe there's foreign interference in U.S. elections. I just think it's... Let me rephrase this. I genuinely believe there's foreign interference. It just is the exact opposite of the way the accusation has been leveled. When they accused Russia of helping Trump, I now believe some foreign nation is helping the Democrats. As much as we're seeing out of Canada, the Chinese Communist Party is helping Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. Whatever they accuse you of, they are guilty of themselves. Guaranteed. Of course, you can't say that publicly because then you get make any claims, make any criticism against the Chinese Communist Party. And for some reason, some people are going to say that's anti-Asian hate. ignoring the fact that the biggest victims of the Chinese Communist Party are Chinese people. China buying off Aussie politicians and land. Yep, they're buying off influence in media in Canada. Buying land. Okay, so 11:55. Now, we're on the locals thing. Let me see if I got it. Booyah. So right after you send this, okay. Okay, so we're going to do our locals. The winner, Majestic Top Hat. The interview is going to be next week. There was discussion that we might get it scheduled for this afternoon, 5 o'clock, and it would have been a locals exclusive as in not part of a broader stream. But it looks like we're going to have to schedule it for next week. So stay tuned for that. Majestic Top Hat coming on next week. We'll try to do it Monday, and that way, if it doesn't happen Monday, we've got the rest of the week to plan. What else? Go watch the Jeremy the Quartering. I'm gonna go get some food because I haven't eaten yet. I woke up. I did my jog. How many steps did I get? Let's see here. I've got a very nice ritual, a nice routine. No, I've done more than 7,000 steps. Update. Refresh. Okay, so my jog was 7,600 steps. Well, I've been sitting on my ass since about 10 o'clock, so that makes sense. 7,600. Say 7,700. So it's about 7 point some odd kilometers. We Hear Well says, so impressed with the quality and volume of content, Viva. My wife says it's too much for her to keep up with, but I understand that. But when people have time for an interview, cripe, I'm not saying no. When Tarek Johnson says, how about Tuesday 7? And Dave Smith says, how about 9 o'clock Tuesday? I'm doing it. And then when Neil Oliver says, dude, we can make it happen tomorrow, we're making it happen tomorrow. I love talking to people, so I'd be doing it anyhow. Viva Fry, can you label the members stream under content? People can't find the interviews. Shit. Okay, I'll ask Ori how I go about doing that. If you haven't determined it yet, I'm not the most technologically. No, I'm good with cameras. I'm good with GoPros. I'm good with like some stuff. I'll ask. So I'll see about that. Viva, you're about as neurotic as Mrs. Entry Required with that thing, steps and all. No. Well, it's only for my jog because I know that it's a 7-ish kilometer loop. And so then I do that. Then I come back and I started doing some arm curls, which I think are useless, but whatever. It makes me sweat and it makes my muscles feel good. And then I'm neurotic because I think I've been eating too much fruit these days. And I'm not sure that eating watermelon and grapes is like nutrients versus calories. I'm not sure it's the best thing. Then my wife says, Viva, you're an idiot. Don't worry. Don't even pay attention to these things. And then I tried to have a coffee, an iced, what was it called? A cafe con leche, whatever. Cafe con leche, and it was 100 calories, and it wasn't worth it. And then I don't like wasting food, so I open the can. I'm not going to force myself to drink 100 calories of crap, but then I'm wasting $3. A number of things. We Hear Well says fruit is sugar. Yeah, well, grape, iron. I eat them with the skin, so they're good. I heard brain parasites cause neuroticism. Are you sure one didn't sneak through your finger cut? Finboy Slick. Now I'm going to look that up. Although no, in fairness, Finboy, I looked that up when I had what I think was COVID back in 2019, like right to 2019. Yeah, right to 2019, 2020. And I remember the videos that I was doing at the time because it was the time when they edited Trump out of Home Alone. And I'm up at my parents' cottage feeling like death warmed over, or whatever, death swarmed, or whatever the hell the expression is. And I was convinced that I had contracted a brain parasite from having unearthed a frozen minnow in the ice at the Eastern Townships. Entry Required says, when I was your age, I was doing half marathons every day of the week, and I never had one of those things. Well, hold on. What were the one of those things? But I'm convinced also half marathons are very, very, that's not good on your knees. But and DL Pete says, $5 tip. Thanks, Viva. So many great interviews. They're pretty good. And then the problem is I was trying to use like an editor to snip and clip, but then the problem is it's like timeliness is an issue and my own neuroses. So I think I have to go back to doing it by myself. All right, who wants to see Winston? Come here. Get over here. No. Get over here. Come here. He's coming. Give it a second. I still think he's angry with me. Oh, He's not even the same dog. Look at this. He looks like... It's not even the same dog. If it weren't for his eyes, he looks like a baby Staffordshire Terrier. I love you. I've never realized how, like, muscular his muzzle was. How well endowed he is. My goodness. Anyhow, he's beautiful. The girls do not like the haircut one bit, but it's not even the same dog. Look at this. All right. He smells so good, which means they used perfume when they weren't supposed to because his skin is very sensitive. Private chat. What did I miss in the private chat? Oh, okay, fine. All right, so that's it. Dog's damn cute. How do you think these political regimes can fund their election operations? It's an international money laundering organization of funding kickbacks. That's Rocket Boy TY. Absolutely. Parasites also cause crackles. Oh, you mean Mike crackles, not nut crackles. Fructose is good for you, though. Not refined. I think it is. Okay, let me just refresh for the last comments. Oh, my goodness. Is that a beautiful picture right there? Finboy Slick. Thought of you last week when I took this drive. Do you remember that place? I'm going to say that looks like Cape Breton Island. That's what I'm saying very quickly. Cape Breton Island on the north side. North side nearing the point where it turns around. Finboy, tell me I'm smart. So jealous of how your knuckles crack. How about my elbow? Oh, yeah. North side of the Gaspésie, almost. That's close enough. The Gaspésie looks a lot like the mountainous part of Cape Breton Island. But yeah, is that beautiful. You're coming right around the bend to get around the other side to Carleton. Okay, well, that's beautiful. Yeah, and Gaspésie is just amazing. Gross and what? Okay. Okay, so let's do it. I'm going to go get some food, and then I'm going to get ready for Jeremy. The quartering. Cracking the knuckles releases the gas between them. Yes, that much I knew. It doesn't actually cause arthritis. That's an old wives' tale. Have a good day, says Mighty Pay. Thanks. Viva says an NICH. That's Rich B. What the hell's my problem? Rich B 313. Okay, go. Enjoy the day. I will see you all in an hour if you're going to tune in. Although my concern is with Jeremy, we might talk about a lot of the same stuff, but I know that he's got subjects matter that will not have been anything that we discussed today. So if you're inclined, the quartering, 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central. See you all soon. Peace out, everyone.